Our show's what you know. We'll always watch TV. And if you think we can't, we'll watch more and you'll see. That's why the people of the web believe in Jim from Las Vegas and Jacob from Sweden.
Shows What You Know, your Cobra Kai podcast. I am Jim from Las Vegas.
And I'm Jacob from Sweden, and there's no crying in karate, Jim. This week on Shows What You Know, we're finally getting into Karate Kid, I was about to say. We're getting into Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 2, which just came out, lucky us. And we're also dipping into Dune Prophecy, which at the time of recording, the first episode literally just dropped. So we're going to chat about these. I just had the thought of, like, how many years have we even been waiting for Cobra Kai to get to this stage? When did Cobra Kai start? I am looking into it currently.
Was it
but I feel like it's been
18?
a while.
I think 2018.
Yeah, you're correct. Well done. May 2018. So it's been a fair few years. They've been pretty productive in putting this show out. It's gone through its ups and downs. We thought it was canceled for a while. Netflix picked it up. This started as a YouTube show. I'm reading all this reporting about Netflix original, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, you ever heard of YouTube Red? That's right. We're the old folks podcast over here.
Yeah, we've been down since the YouTube Red days. We were down with I think, was it between season 2 and 3 when it was like the season was done, but YouTube Red stopped being a thing. So we were like, is this ever going to get released? And then the Netflix announcement, all that, the trials and tribulations of being a Cobra Kai fan. You can hear all of it, too, at showswhatyouknow.com under our, what is it, No Mercy, a Cobra Kai
kickback.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, it was that big wait from 2 to 3 because, as you said, 2018 is where it started, then 2019, the second season, and then it was 2021 before season 3 came. It kind of coincided with how now every show takes at least 2 years to get to the next season, so I guess they kind of just grew into that during their Netflix transition.
Yeah, they've been really good. I mean, the things that have caused delays in their seasons have all been pretty much external. Between the YouTube Red thing, because like I said, I'm pretty sure that season was already shot and maybe not fully edited, but it was pretty much done. So then there was the transition to Netflix, but then besides that, there was of course the writer's strike, the actor's strike, COVID, all of these things that caused small delays, but it was never the show. So that is something to be applauded. That's something I didn't think about until now. But before we get into Cobra Kai,
what TV shows have you been watching? Tell me, I gotta know.
As Jacob said, we just got the one we've been watching this week. We both watched it, Dune Prophecy, the Dune prequel series. Now, I guess before we get into it, what is your fandom? What is your knowledge? Where are you at with the Dune franchise, Jacob?
I never read the books, so I can't say I'm too deep into it. I obviously watched the 2 films like everyone else that came out recently, and I enjoyed them. I watched the first one. I had a serious fever, and not a lot happens in that one, but I think that might be the optimal way of watching it, or maybe on opium or something, because it's very sort of slow and trippy and strange. And then I felt like the second film actually has a classic hero's journey, very straightforward plot, actually wrapped up in a lot of amazing production design. I heard you weren't really a fan of the first Dune, were you, Jim? I don't know how you feel about the second one.
No. And I mean, anytime there's something like this, like some sort of fantasy story, whether it be sci-fi, fantasy, whatever, whenever there's a question of did you read the books? The answer for me is almost always going to be no. It's always going to be no, absolutely not. I don't care. To paint myself as a Philistine, I guess. I mean, unless it's a horror book, I probably haven't read it. But then there's also the Dune films, or there was a TV series as well. There was the films from the 80s, or the film, I should say. And then I think there was some sort of TV thing that they had. There's this whole storied history with Dune that I am completely ignorant of. And yeah, the first movie came out, I wasn't really jiving with it. I believe that was That was kind of one of those dual releases where it was in theaters and also on HBO Max to stream at home. So I'm pretty sure I streamed it at home, which is probably not a great choice because it didn't grab me. Even though like I always there are properties that I'm into, so I go in with the knowledge of people that have gone into Dune that are already into the lore, they're into the world, so they don't need a lot of things to be spelled out for them. So, I always wonder when I see something like Star Wars, kind of a bad example because everyone knows Star Wars, but something along those lines where I'm already like set and have knowledge. I don't need things to, and I always wonder, what's it like? What's it like when my fiance watches this stuff where she doesn't have the same knowledge? So now I get to know what that's like. So with something like this, it didn't really get me. And then I wanted to rewatch it before the second one. I didn't get a chance. So I did what everyone does, where it's like when we quickly try to study for a final or something, we pull up YouTube and we watch a quick recap of the movie.
AI summary.
Yes. But I went into Dune 2, I saw it in the theaters, and I actually really liked it a lot. It's what sold me. Maybe you're right, because it had more of the traditional hero's journey that I needed to kind of pull me into the world. Whatever it was, for whatever reason, I liked Dune 2 a bit more. But I'm still very much an outsider when it comes to like the lore of this world. So that I think can paint my opinion a bit of the show. And I don't mean to say that I dislike the show. I actually kind of liked it. I'm into it because I'm already kind of Dune pilled a little bit, where I'm intrigued by the lore. I want to learn more, but I'm still kind of like, all right, wait, it's a witch. All right, these are the witch ladies. This is the movie series about how the evil women run everything. Yes, my favorite.
I'm intrigued. You have my attention, dude.
Just to quickly finish my thought though, but like just as a pilot, I'm not sure it's fully successful. Even though I like it and I'm on board, I wonder. Maybe more general audiences know about Dune than I do, but I wonder, will this hook a lot of people into a Game of Thrones-esque type like appointment viewing? I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were talking before recording, like, should we have a spoiler section for this? And we were like, there's not that much to spoil yet.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't feel like it, because things are happening, but they're not necessarily, you don't feel the importance of them yet. So the first episode, this is a spoiler-free discussion. The first episode, the summary, I'm just going to read it straight off Wikipedia here. The summary of the first episode, and doesn't have any spoilers, it just says, over 10,000 years before the birth of Paul Atreides, after her family is exiled for their supposed cowardice during the Machine War, Valia Harkonnen joins an order of women who are trained to serve the great houses of the Imperium as truthsayers. So that's kind of the gist of it. But yeah, we're hit with a lot of different characters. It's a star-studded cast, very promising sort of collection of people coming together here. So we have Emily Watson, who's the Mother Superior. I saw her most recently in Small Things Like These, Cillian Murphy's film about the Magdalen laundries here in Ireland. She did a great performance there as a very similar character. She's like the Mother Superior of a nunnery and has a similar kind of vibe. Does a great job there. We have Olivia Williams, who I remember from The Nevers, a show that just crashed and burned in between seasons, but she's the main character there. We have Travis Fimmel, also known as Ragnar Lothbrok from Vikings, and a whole cast of other people as well. I won't get into them all. We have Mark Strong as the Emperor, a bunch of folks popping up in this. And on the lore front, I mean, you should know, like, the Dune films, the two films, they are just the first book of Dune, right? And I think people who are really into the lore of Dune, even they're like, you don't have to read all of them, like, because at some stage it's like there's a bunch of books, they go a little bit off the rails eventually. I think, and I only found this out just before recording, I think this show is technically based off Great Schools of Dune, which is like a prequel series, but it's written by the original author's son and another sci-fi author. But when you think of Dune, you think like, oh, these things are from like the 70s or whatever. No, these came out in like the last decade or two. Like 2012, Sisterhood of Dune came out. The trilogy finished in 2016. So I think they're kind of drawing on that. But clearly, this show would never exist if not for the great success of these two films. Because when the films came out, there were all these cinephiles saying it was the greatest film ever. I didn't feel that way about the first one because I feel like the first film is basically like a prequel to the second film, which is like the actual film, you know? It just kind of stops. It doesn't tell a complete story at all, in my view. But together they work pretty well, I think. So there is deep lore, and I think the lore goes deeper even than people who enjoy Dune necessarily need you to dig into. But it definitely sets the scene for them to be able to pull a lot of different stuff and do something that's very Game of Thrones-ish. Like you said, this feels like they're definitely trying to do Game of Thrones, even though I don't know if they're going to make a show that goes for, 7 seasons here.
Yeah, no, it's clearly looking to scratch a Game of Thrones itch, whether this is based off something that's already, been a book or whatever. I mean, how do you not see the comparisons when, it's vying for a throne, like literally vying for a throne with these grand houses and the intrigue that goes on behind that and the conspiracies and who's who and the backstabs and whatnot. Which I like even though again, this is just another IP, but I do like that they could try to go for that without having it to be Game of Thrones. I can't give them too much credit because they're doing the exact same thing within Game of Thrones itself. So it's not like you get bonus points for that, but I mean, overall, it sets up a ton of stuff. It definitely, I come away with the feeling of like, it's not necessarily, in my opinion, structured to pull in a new audience, because even when Game of Thrones started, I don't feel like Game of Thrones started as much of like, hey, you already know who we are, let's fucking go. I think it took a while to get everyone in that mode. Whereas this, I mean, again, it is coming off of successful films, so it's not wrong for them to do that. But they really are like, hey, here's our big Dune dick, and you're gonna suck it whether you like it or not.
Yeah, it's a worm.
Exactly.
They do interestingly start with this like voiceover where they're like explaining some of the lore, and which I think is extremely necessary. At the same time, it's like it's almost more information given to you than you get across the two Dune films.
True.
It's like,
yeah.
oh yeah, machine war. Like I don't remember what I know from the films and what I know from my partner Una explaining things in my ear as we're watching the films anymore, because it's all melded together a little bit. I don't have deep knowledge of the lore. It's just like they don't really do much explaining of what spice is or whatever in the films. So the voiceover at the start actually talks about this machine war and it gets into it, which makes sense because in this timeline or this part of time, it's like 100 years ago rather than 10,000 years ago. And it's a prequel, which is never a positive in my book, but it does take place 10,000 years before the films. So you're kind of like, well, they can kind of do a lot of stuff here without, being preemptively spoiled by the movies or original books.
Yeah. It's still a cheat. It's still kind of like, you're still like hearing, ooh, Atreides, ooh, Harkonnen, or whatever. Like you're still playing with that. Like, I guess if you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it. Like, but you're right. It's almost like, why not just have it take place 10,000 years in the future? Then I would almost be way more intrigued if it's like 10,000 years after the death of Paul Atreides or something. All right, now we're at new grounds here.
Those books probably exist as well.
Yes, that's true.
So they'll probably get around to it. They're just starting now from scratch and they're going to work through the 10,000 years. But yeah, no, it's very Game of Thrones. There's political marriages. There's intrigue in space. It's space, but it's all obelisks and grand empty halls. It's kind of a cool look to it, right? It's sort of that mix of fantasy and sci-fi done right. Which is often done wrong, in my opinion, but it's kind of like, big, grand, empty halls, a lot of ceremony and pomp that we don't understand. It's kind of funny watching it with subtitles, as I did, because it'll say, like, ominous music, and it's like that similar captions over and over, because a lot of it is like ominous sounds and a prophecy, and it's like, but it's well put together enough that you're kind of on board with it, and it honestly didn't drag or anything. It's interesting. There's so many characters being introduced as well, but I didn't feel it was overwhelming. I'm like, okay, we know these people are the acolytes or whatever. We'll see them interact with this other character coming up, and yeah, overall I'm on board. But I guess I'm not heavily Dune pilled, so I'm not like hyped out of my mind. But I'm like, yeah, okay, let's see what we got here.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, wow, what a great casting of young Emily Watson. Like, it feels like a lost art these days because people just try to do some CGI ghoul version of a of a young actor, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
It was cool that they did find someone that does. It's an actual actress, but it feels like it like completely connects and makes sense as a young Emily Watson. So,
Which is
I thought that was
exactly
well done.
what my partner said. As soon as we cut from like 30 years ago to present day, and the two faces, like, what great casting. And I didn't realize this at the time, but yeah, Jessica Barden, we know her from The End of the Fucking World.
Oh, I
which
didn't realize that.
Which we've also reviewed at showswhatyouknow.com if you want to
Yes.
go back all the way to 2017 when we reviewed the first season of that.
I don't know if I ever did. We didn't talk about the second season. I don't know if I even watched it.
I did not. And yeah, it was one of those where like it was based on a comic, and the comic very clearly ended, and it very clearly ended a certain way that you can't pick up from, and then they made another season. So I think that's part of why I wasn't that
Yeah.
excited to get back into it. But yeah, she does great in this. Maybe we should go back.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So it's funny too, because yeah, I definitely. You're right. They do some hand holding with some narration and stuff. But I'm known to watch. I always watch the post credit things on HBO where they talk to the actors and they talk to like the producers or whatever. And I got a much better understanding of what was going on when they were like just outwardly telling me like, oh, so then this happens, and I'm like, oh my God, that did happen. But yeah, so I'm intrigued. But again, I keep thinking like, huh, is this what people want to see? I guess we'll see. I could be wrong.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, I think I think one difference with Game of Thrones is there was still at the start of Game of Thrones, it was very clear who you were supposed to root for. You know,
Yeah.
we got the Starks, bunch of kids, cool wolves. You know, and then it was kind of giving you swerves over time of like what was actually happening to these characters, right? Whereas in this, I'm like, I'm interested in a lot of these characters. I'm not sure I root. They all seem corrupt and terrible. So, you know, that'll be interesting. I won't feel as bad when they all die. A bit of a sort of House of the Dragon vibe, more so than Game of Thrones, really.
Yeah. So we're good. We're moving on. Actually, so I guess there was one other thing we've been watching, right?
What TV shows have you been watching? Tell me, I gotta know.
Oh man, and that intro would be right at home in Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai, what, season 6 did we say? Is this season 6?
Season 6, part 2.
Part 2.
Jim.
So yeah, they've been released a trilogy of 5 episodes. So we a couple months back, we saw the first 5. Here we are with the middle 5 here, episodes 6 through 10 of season 5. We'll talk in general, no spoilers at first here. We'll get into spoilers in a second. One of the main things that comes to mind watching this is everything is so contrived. And I guess it is kind of a sign that this show does feel like it needs to come to a conclusion. Just because it's like, yeah, there's only so many misunderstandings you can have that are, you know, everyone is right technically in their own way. That being said, maybe this makes me a mark. I still had a lot of fun with it, and I'm really happy to see these characters again. I mean, I love all of them. So even though there was moments where I'm like rolling my eyes, like, oh, geez, come on. I'm still like, hell yeah, dude. Johnny Lawrence. Hell yeah, Miguel. Oh, my God. Hawk. Oh, my God. Swedish. No, it wasn't Swedish. Oh, my God. Like a Spanish hawk. What? Oh, was it
sorry,
a Swedish Huck?
No, it wasn't there, but there was a Swedish team in there and an Irish team. So,
Yeah, there was, and they both got their asses beat. But anyways,
yeah. Yeah. No, I had a lot of fun with it as well. It's definitely like a thing you got to get your head back into because kind of if you think about it, nothing that happens in Cobra Kai ever makes sense. They raise the stakes over and over, and there's some repeating of storylines. People fall out and become friends again and fall out and become friends again, and there's a lot of fighting left, right, and center. And this is like the final part, right? They're at the World Championships, the SWYK Taikai now rather than the All Valley. They've graduated. Shit's serious and everything. And I think so. I did have a lot of fun with it. There's a lot of things in it that don't really make sense if you think about them. But the way I've reconciled that is I've had a realization, Jim, and it's that Cobra Kai is a sports anime. It follows the logic exactly of any sports anime. I assume this is something you partake in often, but basically like the ridiculous over the top nature of this show, the way that different dojos are introduced and then they all have like a cool character that's like the head of that dojo or new senseis coming in all the time and everyone's, whoa, I defeated this person, but now this other person's even way stronger. It's all extremely sports anime. So even like the shouting boss of the SWYK Taikai, Gunther Braun. He's like an anime version of a hardcore Western character. The teams, we mentioned the Swedish team and the Irish team, they're extremely stereotypical. They're just kind of like cartoons in the background, even talk with like a cartoonish Irish accent. And the Irish, they're always itching for a scrap. That's their whole motivation for getting involved and doing some illegal fighting. Why not? Why wouldn't they? They're Irish, but that would also make sense in a sports anime. So and so would all of the sort of over the top drama between the characters as well. So once I kind of set that in mind at the end of the first of these episodes, I was like, oh yeah, like that was my pathway back into the Cobra Kai mindset. It was just something that just clicked where I'm like, don't think, Jacob, you can't think of this as reality. Like you have to be Kreese and remember that this is a karate show and karate is the most important thing that exists in this world.
Yeah, I mean, even the Russian team. God damn. The Russians get a break or what? But, but see, and this just stems back to my initial inklings of a problem, and we'll get into more of this in spoilers, is I love that when it is for the fate of the valley. When the situations are big with the characters, but the location is small stakes. I enjoy that a bit more. Where it starts to come off a little more sillier than, we're, at this worldwide global karate competition. Now I get they have to do some sort of progression as they continue, but that's why, it does seem like the show's amazing. Don't get me wrong. I'd love if it could keep on going, but it just feels like it's starting to lose some of the charm that I enjoyed. Was more so I loved the smaller stakes of the actual goals in mind, but the big personalities involved in it. So, yeah. But again, I still had a lot of fun with these episodes.
Yeah, because if going back even to the original The Karate Kid, when the stakes are, is Daniel-san going to have self-respect? That's what he's actually fighting for. Is he going to be able to put all of this bullying and toxicity behind him? Like, that's the actual fight. Then it's like, okay, it makes sense why everything is so intense and heightened. And, and when the fight is about the fate of the valley, even though that's very heightened of like, oh, I'm going to run every dojo in the valley. It's like, that's... Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous, and it's kind of like, oh, you can kind of think these people are insane. And then when it's like, this is the very serious world championship of karate, and everyone's the same, everyone's just as ridiculous, you're like, oh, it's the world that's insane. It's not we're not watching crazy characters in a normal world. It's like, oh, the whole world, it's kind of showing the cracks a little bit of like, that's why I had to realign it in like anime terms, just what worked for me personally of like, oh, now I can keep being into it. It's just like the whole world is this way. Kreese isn't crazy. Kreese is correct, Yes,
yeah, because the fate of the valley, it's better because it's not so much important in the grand scheme of things, but it's important to these people, and that gets me more involved for whatever reason. At least in this particular show, in this particular world. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have much else to say outside of spoilers. I don't know. Did you have any other comments before we?
I mean, we could say, why is it in Barcelona? And clearly it's just tax reasons. Like, there's no reason for this to be. And I remember saying this even back when we were talking about like the previous part when it's announced that this tournament's going to be in Spain. And it's like, Spain, huh? Like, what's the theme here? Like, why? What does it matter? No, it's just like, since 2015, they've had pretty good tax incentives for film productions in Catalonia, in Spain, because I had to look into it because I'm like, that's it, right? That has to be it. And that's fine. You know, places have these incentives. It's why there's a lot of production here in Ireland as well. But I was just like, why are they in Barcelona? Because just on the theme of it being a heightened world tournament and stuff, I have to say as well, the ring that we're in for a lot of this part of the show, we're sort of in the world championships, the SWYK Taikai, it looks smaller and less impressive than the Valley tournament, right? That's a problem. I mean, I think they do great things with the lighting, and you know, some of the fights actually look really good in it as far as like visual production, but it's literally just like a big gymnasium square, and you can kind of see people standing on an upper level observing, but they're clearly supposed to be like senseis or whatever, and you just kind of see them in their uniforms, and I'm like, the spectators add something that's totally missing here. Sure, they're supposedly filming it and streaming it or whatever, but it doesn't seem to be on, you know, CNN. It's not on like a main channel going out there. It seems like a little live stream. It seems like a very niche little community that they're doing here, because it's just this small competition, and there's so many little things where I'm like, oh, you've just changed it's like a world-class competition for the best karate fighters, but you're able to just change the rules without telling the competitors ahead of time, and all this stuff that doesn't really add up. And it just looks like a soundstage, and it's what we've talked about a lot in Cobra Kai, going back to like the first seasons, where it felt like there were more things being shot sort of on location or outside or whatever. And there's some things like that here, of course, but everything kind of feels artificial and, you know, well lit in this. There's like one training montage where they're in everywhere across Catalonia. They're running and doing stuff, and it's all in like 1 minute. And I'm like, that's the only thing that you probably shot there, or like that's the thing you did so that it's like, maybe we can go to Spain and film this. That'd be nice. And you just have like one montage, and then everything else is just kind of like sets, which, you know, is fine, but it's just like adds to the whole feeling that this is not reality. You know, it's not as grounded because it looks like they're just fighting on a set.
Yeah, they used it a few times outside of the montage, just that shot on the beach where there's like a big hotel or a big building or something in the horizon. Because I didn't really look into it, but I was like, I wonder, did they really go to Spain? And then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess they did, at least for some of it. But yeah, I mean, that's been a thing about Cobra Kai. Like I've mentioned it before. Sometimes even they go to a supermarket. I'm like, no place ever looks like a real place on Cobra Kai. Yeah. They're clearly in a warehouse that they just threw a couple shelves up. Except for, but the tournament stuff they've handled in the past has looked much better. I didn't even think of that, so that's actually a great point. But also in the same vein, I do feel like they really upped their game with the fight scenes. I think the fight scenes are actually a big improvement. This season, which does help.
Yeah, I would agree. And as I said, listen, even just some of the lighting and some of the slow motion scenes, you're just like, I was just staring at it at times like, that looks really cool. And that's what you need in this show. You need to have scenes like that. And that hasn't always been the case in some of the fight scenes, because you're more like drawn in by the drama of what's going on, versus I could forgive things because the fighting looked good in this, which is great. You know, it's a big part of the show.
So yeah, do you think we'll get into spoilers here?
Yeah, let's get into spoilers. So we'll be discussing, just for clarity, episodes 6 to 10. Nothing beyond that. That's out right now. Drop that beat, Jim. Oh, yeah.
Ayo, this is AI generated bullshit. AI generated bullshit by AI Jakob. Here we go.
Spoiler alert, we're gonna spill the beans. No turning back, no living in your dreams. We'll reveal secrets and we'll blow your mind. Darth Vader was dead the whole time, and in The Sixth Sense, Bruce Willis was that kid's dad. Dumbledore killed Snape, made all the kids sad. Man, you can't control these spoiler bars, and the Planet of the Apes was actually Mars.
Now, one thing, I'm going to start right at the end here. Even though I said all this stuff about upping the stakes, it makes it worse, I'm very intrigued that a death happened on this show. Because I didn't expect that. So you know what, Cobra Kai? All right, let's see what you got, man. You did it in a way, like, they're always doing things. Of course, all the things are misunderstandings. Outside of, say, like, Kreese or Terry Silver, they're evil people. But most of the things with our characters are like people look at us things from a certain angle, and that causes the conflict. So they did that in a death. Like, no one actually killed someone. This, like, the biggest piece of shit, or one of the biggest piece of shit characters on the show, killed himself trying to be a villain. But I'm intrigued in where we go from here, so I'm kind of on board. And also, that end fight rocked. I don't know if it rocks more than I still think the school fight is the ultimate. Like, that's Cobra Kai, like, in its purest form, because it also is a small stakes thing, but, like, it's reached this, peak of, like, all the kids are karate crazy and they're fighting in a school. So it harkens back to that a little bit, because I was fully on board, and then they have someone fucking die and then it ends. I'm like, all right, let's see what you got.
Yeah, I was spoiled on the death, which sucks.
Ooh, how?
I was literally just going to double check what episode I needed
Never
to
do
watch.
that. Stupid. Never do that.
I just Googled Cobra Kai, and that's it. The headline was like, "Why does Quan die in Cobra Kai episode 10?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't remember who Quan was, but I'm sure by the time he dies, I'll know." And sure enough, they build up Quan as this villain. He dies at the end. Now, the fight is insane. And I'm not talking like, whoa, it's insane, dude. I'm like, it's insane that it happens. This is where you have to suspend your disbelief so far. Jim, the idea that all these young professional athletes, the ones who aren't even involved in any of the on-screen drama, we have to assume they've had a bunch of off-screen drama as well with one another. As I said earlier, the Irish are just like, "Hard it her, why wouldn't we get involved in this fight? Let's go." And the Swedes are there like, "Jo, men jag tror jag vill också spöa skiten ur allihopa." And everyone just fucking goes crazy. And yeah, someone dies because it makes sense. You've traveled cross countries, across the world to be in this international tournament where you're like, maybe I'll be able to pay for college. Someone throws one punch and she yells, "Let's go!" And they all have so many bottled up hormones or whatever.
No, exactly.
That all of a sudden it's an all out brawl where everyone's fighting everyone. It makes sense when it's in the school gym in season 2.
It makes
because
we've seen
the karate cult grow in the valley over the course of decades. Versus here, these characters who have no reason. But it's a cartoon. It's not just a cartoon, though. It's specifically an anime. All makes sense in a sports anime, as I said earlier.
I disagree. I do think it's young kids with hormones, but also kids that have been training for however long in combat sports. They're here at the big daddy of them all, the grand stage. Tensions are high. Everyone has stuff going on. You're trained to fight and win, and some of these people are losing. So if you get an opportunity to get revenge on someone that maybe knocked your team out, you're going to take it. It made complete sense to me. This is exactly how things would go down. It's like, it's the same thing. We talk about this a lot on my podcast, Jim and Them. I mean, whether it be a sports riot here in the States, or, a soccer riot across the pond, when you see a group start to flip a car over, if you're there, you're just kind of like, we're flipping the car over. Everyone joins in, because it's just that hive mind, that mob mentality takes over. The human condition, my friend. I think that was just put on display for all to see. Sometimes you hold a mirror up to society, and society doesn't like what it sees.
Well, if this is how the world works, apparently I got to watch more sports because it sounds a lot more interesting the way you talk about it. And also, those people flipping the cars, it's the scumbag fans. When do you see the people being paid like hundreds of thousands of dollars out there setting fire to stuff? Maybe you do. It is America.
Who's getting paid? No, but these people are not getting paid all that money. That's what I'm saying.
But I'm saying that they've spent a lot of time and energy to get to this point, and
exactly. Some of them just had it taken away. Some of them, it's over for them. Some of them have already been eliminated.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's why. That's where it comes from.
Okay,
speaking of spoilers,
I said
though,
my piece.
Speaking of spoilers, I had Mr. Miyagi spoiled for me because the other main thing of contention here is we do see a CGI Miyagi, and I had mentioned to you, I said, "Oh my God, Pat Morita's wife spoiled something," but I didn't tell you what it was.
Yes, I asked you not to because we were trying to keep the separation between church and state over here.
I did save a screenshot. It was on Facebook. It wasn't even like William Zapka's page. It was like, well, it says William Zapka private. So someone just like made this group, but they posted like, it's time to take the fight to the world stage. The Sekai Taikai Cobra Kai season 6 part 2, November 15th. And she quoted it and wrote, "Anxious to see this final episode of which they bring my late husband, parentheses, Miyagi, back to life." So she just says this. She just puts this out there. Now, in a weird way,
it sound like he actually comes back to life, though, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, in a weird way, I was glad that I had this spoiled for me because I had built this up of like, this is gonna be so bad. We're gonna see a CGI Miyagi. Like, how is this gonna play out? So when I actually see how they used it, I was like, oh, you know what? That's not so bad. And if you're listening to the spoilers and you haven't watched it for whatever reason, we have this. I mean, again, the character assassination kind of Daniel, because it's like they make him a little too. I get it. We all love Miyagi, but it's a combination of things. They make him so caught up in it, which is in his character, but they continually try to retcon and add all this stuff to Miyagi where it's becoming annoying almost. Like, it used to be charming. It used to be like, oh, hell yeah, like Miyagi. I love that Miyagi, like, no matter what, Miyagi has a shadow over this show and over this world, as he should. But you're playing in sacred grounds here. Like, there's things that you shouldn't touch, and they're getting a little too close to the sun with all the stuff they're doing with Miyagi. But either way, so we have this thing where Daniel's been obsessed with it, of course, and then we do find out we don't even know all the ins and outs of this mystery yet of how Miyagi was involved in this tournament, and then we do get confirmation that his match ended in a death because there was blood, and there was also blood on his headband. So Daniel has this nightmare, and it was pretty good casting of a young Miyagi, I guess, similar to talking about Dune Prophecy. We get to see a young Miyagi, and I do like the idea that in Daniel's nightmare he's fighting Daniel. And it is funny that their CGI Miyagi is murdering Daniel, essentially, in this battle in Daniel's nightmare. So it wasn't really a bad way to go. If you're going to do it, I guess I would prefer they didn't do it either way, but it wasn't a bad way to do that.
Yeah, but they only do it for like a second as well, which I think is a big thing. Because so as you said, they're fighting like someone cast as young Miyagi, or Daniel's fighting someone cast as young Miyagi, but it's a dream, and he's like, "What's going on, Mr. Miyagi? Why are you picking on me? What is this, a lesson? What am I?" And you're like, "This is clearly a dream. Like, it's a dream, but it's like it's pretty good." And then for the last line before Daniel passes out, it changes to actual Miyagi's face, which is CGI'd in there. But it's not for long enough for you to actually go like, "Oh, this looks terrible." It's like, it looks fine. It's okay. So yeah, I didn't mind it. And if you told me that spoiler, I would have thought that they were literally bringing him back to life, like he's been hiding out in a cave or something.
I never thought that, but I mean, I knew there was going to be some sort of either a flashback, or I mean, I guess I assumed it was going to be a flash.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to if Trivan says, "Oh my God, so many to count." I mean, there's one of the biggest ones is how Johnny and Miguel fly back to California, and then immediately fly back to Spain, just so they can get Kenny there in the Taikai Saikai. Like, oh my God, dude. This, I mean, I still liked the moment. I loved when Johnny said that Miguel is his son. Because I mean, I've always been a champion of Miguel. I do feel like Miguel is the heart and soul of this show, and as we lose more and more of him, that's kind of where the show shifts a bit. Like, because even before then, when they were making Miguel like mad at Robbie, like all these people are insane. The way they act, the way like Robbie should just get over that his girlfriend, whose mom died, just happened to show up. But then also, Tori should just get over it and stay with Miyagi. Like, they're always just kind of like, they should come on. Like, let's get over these things already. What did
let's
you
not
think?
even like Hawk and Dimitri. In this part, they've just devolved into absolute shit stirrers. Like, everyone on the team is so worried about Robbie being off his game. Meanwhile, worry more about these two freaking idiots who are constantly messing things up for the whole team. But because of the way Cobra Kai does their drama, they interweave personal drama with fights. And the reason that the Saikai Taikai isn't just a tournament is that once you put people in a tournament bracket, you're kind of closing off development for characters, right? So this way, they have a bunch of different competitions where they gain points or whatever. It means that all of the characters who are there and present can be involved and can fuck things up because they have drama going on in their personal life. Then they can resolve that drama before their big fight or whatever, and, it all comes together. That's how they do it. There are so many instances of people conflicted in a fight looking beyond the fight that they're in to the literal person that's causing their internal turmoil, and then they take a hit. That happens like 8 times in these episodes, and I am not complaining about that, but I am complaining about Hawk and Dimitri because they need to get over their shit more so even than Tori and whoever, because there's several times where they just fuck things up so badly for the team and nobody calls them out on it, even though they do terribly the whole time.
Well, and especially because then when Kenny shows up and then Dimitri's like, we can't trust Kenny. Like, Kenny's, and it was so funny because they're clearly setting up that Dimitri, because before Dimitri starts saying what his thoughts are, they're cutting to him like looking at Kenny, and I'm like, what the fuck could they possibly be setting up right now? Because it's just these awkward cuts of him giving him a stink eye. And I'm like, are we going to find out Dimitri's been racist this whole time? Is that what they're setting up to reveal? But yeah, we've always taught, I mean, this has been a thing, this is the thing, the show has excelled at this in the past. Like, the whole thing with Johnny and Daniel through the first 3 seasons, maybe even into season 4 a bit, it was a masterclass in will they, won't they? Like, you can hear our discussions on this. We loved it. But it does get to a certain point where now it's like, all right, you could still have them butt heads. They could still be now a buddy cop team, but it can't always be life or death. Not even life or death, just I'm leaving. We're not doing this anymore. Like, you can have them get into conflicts without it always being the 9th degree of you know what, LaRusso, when this is all done, lose my number. Or you know what I mean? When before it's be the godfather of my child. It's just too, the swings are just so wide, it gets a little tiresome.
Yeah, I think the interpersonal drama overall is pretty good. But it's going to wear thin after 6 seasons. And especially, I think Hawk and Dimitri just stuck out to me because they have very little else to do. And their plot of their conflict doesn't get resolved until the penultimate episode or whatever. So they're basically just bickering through the whole season. And you kind of just go, why are these two friends? Why are they involved in any of this? And as you said with Dimitri, just being and also fuck Kenny, by the way. You're okay. I mean, you're doing that because that's what the plot needs you to do right now. It kind of feels which is fine, but it just turns you into a less interesting and more 2-dimensional character. But again, that's going to happen after 6 seasons. All the conflicts, everyone's been enemies, everyone's been friends, But if I can go back to the flight real quick, aren't they supposed to be worried about Miguel having money for college? In Karate Kid Part 2, Daniel spends his entire college fund to fly across the world to Japan. And I said, when we discussed part 1, I was always like, who's paying for these trips to Barcelona? Is this the auto dealership eating the cost? Find
Yes.
Kenny, get him on a plane. Yeah, just get him on a plane to Barcelona. No worries. Like, what is going on with the shooting back and forth here? It doesn't make any sense, but, you know, if we don't need it to, it's fine.
Yeah, like get him on a plane immediately. We need him out here. I'm trying to see.
You know how when you buy a ticket for tomorrow, it's always super cheap as well, both for Kenny and for Johnny and Miguel when they're back, and they're both ways. Both ways they buy immediate tickets to fly back to LA as well. You know, it's not New York; they have to fly all the way across the US too. But anyway,
and then who's the tall guy from the Evil Dojo? Oh, it's let's see, is it Patrick Lewis? Who does he play? Axel. Well,
the
it
Iron
is
Dragons.
Yes, it's hilarious how like the way they have to try to quickly, introduce some of these extra characters. And I mean, on one hand, I like it because it's like shorthand, like, oh, here's the Swedish team, let's beat the hell out of them. Here's the Irish team, like, yeah, they're always answering for a fight. Because it was funny because I was thinking of you because at one point I forget the order it's in, but like. Miyagi-Do's up against Sweden or something, and then right after that, Cobra Kai is up against Ireland, and I'm like, man, both Jacob's countries about to be taken out quickly here.
Yeah.
And then they have to.
One quick thing about that. What's with all these white countries, Jim, in this World Karate Tournament?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, sure. Ireland has some good fighters. Sweden in the World Karate Championship of teams, like there's one Korean team, and like I didn't look at the full bracket, but I'm like, okay, Cobra Kai. What's with most of the teams being white? Anyway,
and we have to quickly introduce Axel and Zara. I mean, Zara at least gets a little bit more screen time as like the social media stuck up annoying mean girl, and then Axel is the abused kid that has like quickly has a crush on Sam that makes him immediately hate Miguel, which is so funny.
Yeah.
But what was funny to me though is because as we're watching this, I'm sure as most people do, you're telegraphing things because I'm like, all right, we know Robbie and Quan have a thing that we'll have to see play out. But it's like, oh, how are they going to make this Miguel and Axel thing play out? And then they're like, fuck it, huge group fight. We can because I'm like, well, is Miguel going to have to be captain? But it's like that would kind of kill Robbie's arc a little bit of realizing he could be the captain. So, I'm playing like, backseat writer here. Like, oh, what are they trying to do? And it's like, oh, group fight. Hell yeah, let's go. But yeah. Like when it comes down to just building up so many contrived things, I do think that the Tory stuff is still handled pretty well. They do backtrack. I wish they leaned a little bit more into the promise of the cliffhanger of episode 5. Like I kind of would have liked to see Tory maybe a little bit more angry and leaning into being more of a villain here, but they do the TV thing of like quickly trying to backtrack that and be like, no, she's still Tory. It's just she had no other choice, which is fine. But I would have rather have seen her come to that point than and be more in like, I wanted her to be more like, fuck Miyagi-Do. I want to destroy them initially just because she has misplaced anger. But we didn't really see that. But we've seen enough crazy Tory in the past. I guess I understand why they didn't do that.
Yeah, on Tory. Well, let me get to Tory in a second. I wanted to touch on what you said about the sort of rival dojo, the Iron Dragons, because it was when at the end of the first episode, Miyagi-Do gets their ass kicked by Cobra Kai, and then Cobra Kai gets their ass kicked by another dojo, a new dojo that we know nothing about, the Iron Dragons, and that's really, and I know I keep saying it, but that's really when I was like, oh, like this is exactly what would happen like in an anime because because of the power scaling problem that happens in everything from Dragon Ball Z to like every single sports anime as well, where it's like your main characters are getting better and better, so you have to constantly introduce new villains who are like 10x better than the ones you were facing previously, right? Because everyone's up in their games. So that felt extremely like, here's a new cool dojo. And I do love that. I did love the reveal that Silver was involved with them because it kind of ties everything together, because otherwise it's just like they're a different dojo and they're assholes as well, just like Cobra Kai. Now I was like, oh,
Yeah.
it's all coming together. This is really feels like final season stuff. And Axel, that character was kind of whatever. I did like Zara, what's her name? Reina. I thought she was very charismatic. And I realized now as I was looking into it, the actor is actually Reina Vallandigham, I think is her name, and she's a 13-time world champion in Taekwondo, 4 times black belt. She is basically playing herself. She has 3 million followers on Instagram and is clearly the online extremely successful fighter and also Instagram model character. Like, she's basically playing herself, and I think she does a great job of that.
Yeah, okay. No, it's interesting. I didn't realize that either. I was kind of hoping more. I thought they were setting up more of a oh my God, Miyagi-Do and Cobra Kai are going to have to work together here to overcome a tougher dojo. It's not quite that, but I would have almost liked to have seen that more than the inner bickering between Miyagi-Do, because it would almost be more interesting that they have to work to get very similar to a Johnny and Daniel having to figure out their differences and work together. You would have been, developing that same type of story, but with, these villains, because they already start nerfing the Kim character.
Kim, is that the lady Cobra, or who's Kim?
Sense that the created Cobra team her up with Chosen, they soften her a bit, where now it's she's not so much this evil Cobra Kai sensei, she's just someone trying to please her father or whatever, you know what I mean? She's caught up in her own circumstances here.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, if you want to see them working together, Chosen and her are certainly working together. And yeah, they are. Chosen has been pretty cartoonish, just in general, I think. But I rewatched the Karate Kid and the Karate Kid Part 2 in between the parts of this season, and it really made me reappreciate having Chosen back in the show, and also just appreciate the wild concept that Cobra Kai is. Because after 6 seasons and years and years, where you're gonna become a little bit blind to it, but it's isn't it amazing that they've actually been able to pull these people back into creating something in this universe? I know it's very cheesy and over the top and everything, but it still makes me feel grateful. Even is it Guzman? They have just a random. They've gone everywhere to pull every little thread to get characters back in a way that makes absolutely no sense if these were real people, but if they're people who are reliving their karate glory days, it makes perfect sense. And Chosen, when he comes in, because Johnny gets a talking to about don't upset the sponsors at this event or whatever, and then Chosen, who's usually level-headed, comes in and starts going insane and throwing flowers all over the place and making a total scene. It's pretty silly, but I was still it's Chosen, man. It's from Okinawa, remember?
Yeah.
Which I think is me being a mark as well, because it's just kind of playing with my heartstrings a bit. But I was fully on board with him smooching up the Cobra lady, I have to say.
But it's clear that, unless they just couldn't get the Kumiko actress, it's so clear that that's a misunderstanding, right? When you just have it's the old gag of I went to go see her with flowers and a guy answered the door, and then but I don't know, maybe since they have him hooking up with a villain now, that maybe it was just an availability thing.
But I think if they can get Kumiko back, they can have kind of a love triangle there, where now he's going to end up with Cobra Lady anyway, and whatever. So that'll be fun. But yeah, no, very clearly that he clearly flew all the way to Okinawa. There was a guy, so he threw his flowers away and got on a different flight across the world again, because that's what they keep doing in this show. And you're okay, everyone's rich. That's fine.
My
that's
problem
most TV shows, everyone's rich, I guess.
I guess I get that people like Chosen, but he really is kind of it's a character we don't need. He doesn't need to be there. So I guess they make him a cartoon character. So I guess it's fun that he is there, but it really doesn't make a lot of sense that he's there. It's because it's like it'd be like if they just liked Mike Barnes a lot and they always want to have Mike Barnes around. You know, like you could do that apparently. But if they don't get Hilary Swank, they fucked up. In the end, if Hilary Swank does not show up in the next 5 episodes, even though I love Cobra Kai, you fucked up. Give her whatever she needs. I mean, you could say maybe she just doesn't want to do it. They tried a bunch of times. She said no. I don't care. Ring up all the spend your Spain money to get Hilary Swank to pop up on this goddamn show.
Your pesos, as Johnny would say.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, maybe she's busy being in the movie, Jim. We don't know. It's in different canon.
That's true.
Yeah, Unchosen as well. Just a quick one. There's this joke, I guess, in episode 8 where he's like trying to get into the nightclub and he's like, "I'm looking for teens. I'm looking for teens."
Oh,
and
yeah.
At first, I thought surely the joke is that he's like a horned up pedophile, right? Like that's the joke. But then they all act like it's a relatively reasonable thing to say.
They do,
and they keep asking it like of other people, and they're not like, "What are you talking about?" They're like, "There ain't no teens here. Go check by the beach." And I'm like, okay, so is this truly just like American writers being like, "Ah, yes, they can't have teens in the club because, you know, the drinking age in Spain, like most of Europe is like 18, I'm pretty sure. So like there would be teens in the club. So like him just cutting the line and yelling about wanting teens, it works as a joke, but I was just confused because I'm like, oh, you're not playing it as a joke because, you know, Kim, the Cobra lady, is coming up and she's also saying that. And then they're talking to other people. And then it's like, oh, yes, the teens in Barcelona. Yeah. Yes, we're going to easily find them by going around asking for teens. It's so strange.
Speaking of kind of like weird stuff, it was so bizarrely out of place to have the Carmen fake out scene where they walk into a hospital room where a bed is covered in blood. Like it was a bizarre way to do that. And then a second later she comes in on the wheelchair or whatever. Like, I don't know. I don't think that was necessary, honestly. What are you trying to do here?
It's a weird kind of cheap shot, which is like, because you're watching it and you're like, surely this, that's the same episode as, I actually don't have a note of it, but I know there's a bunch of wacky shit happening in the other storylines, you know? So you can't have just a hospital bed and, they do some fine acting or whatever, but it's like, it's for like 30 seconds. There's just like, it's just a fake out. So I don't know. It was definitely a bit weird, and it played out exactly the way I expected it, that it wasn't real. So that's why I'm like, okay. I guess how else would you do it? They just show up and she's there and she's fine. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly would take that over them coming in and having like 30 seconds of them thinking that she bled to death on this bed.
Yeah, and
weirdly
they and I was also like, usually when there are pregnancy problems in movies and TV, it's during labor. So I was like, oh, the baby's not there yet. I was like, oh, she wasn't like the giving birth. It was just a problem. But then I'm like, the only reason that's the case is so that Johnny can fly back, right? Like, it would have made more sense, I think, as at least this is what happens in most movies and TV shows, if the baby was born or there was something going on there. But no, it was literally just a reset of like, you guys should fly back to Spain.
Yeah. And then the whole thing with like Devin being there, I mean, I guess she learned something in a way, but I realized they just did that so Devin could be like in Johnny's corner, because technically Johnny wouldn't have really anyone as they're like arguing over like Sensei LaRusso wants to do this, and then like Sam would be like, my dad wants to do this, why are we not doing it? And then Devin has to be one that's like, but like Sensei Lawrence doesn't get his say, or he wants to do that. You know what I mean? Since you don't have Tori typically would be the one doing that, or Miguel would kind of be the one doing that, but Miguel's going through his other stuff. So it just comes off as like this weird ham-fisted thing, because it ends up being like kind of for naught, because then Kenny comes and takes her place. But I guess she still learns a lesson along the way, which is what it's all about. But also the whole thing with a lot of this stuff, and I think we mentioned this discussing the first 5 episodes, is they kind of have to make Johnny and Daniel really bad senseis for this stuff to play out, because they never talk to Kenny. Like, it's so weird. Kenny goes through this whole thing. I mean, at least they have Amanda kind of talk to him, almost. Like, this whole thing happens, and they're never once like, hey, Kenny, you don't have to deal with, I was bullied once. Like Daniel LaRusso is sitting around not caring about, what do they call him? Shit pants or something?
Shit butt.
Yeah, shit butt. And even to the point where then he comes back and they don't trust him. They don't even at least have a moment of like, hey, Kenny, like, well, we're really glad you're here. I think just one quick scene, and I get you can argue it's because Johnny's caught up in his own shit, Daniel's caught up in his own shit, but just give me one scene at least where they talk to Kenny. I feel like you could make an argument that Kenny doesn't exist really. Like he's not a real, he's like a fake imaginary character.
You've
like
never
you could have
Kenny though. That's like you want that to be true though, Jim.
But no, the thing is, I like Kenny. Like I want this stuff. I feel for the character because I feel like he never. When has he had a scene with Johnny or Daniel?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And it's because they want to show Robbie's leadership in that fight where they're doing the tag team thing. And it's like, and they literally like have it be in slow motion and there's like voiceover of like, lead and they will follow or whatever. And then he tags in Kenny and that's kind of like showing the team led, oh, the captain trusts Kenny, so we should. And obviously Kenny kills it. I do like what he does in that fight. But yeah, no, I mean, Johnny and Daniel are bad at their jobs. That's just something we should come to terms with.
That's true, yeah.
Miguel has to give them coaching to be better senseis because Miguel is the heart of the show. That's in episode 10 now, skipping ahead. But yeah, it makes sense, honestly, why Miguel is not the captain and why he doesn't have to fight in the tournament because he's already Zen. His story is complete. He is a complete and well-rounded character and he's able to tell them off and tell them that they need to get their shit together and be better senseis, which is. And then they're like, oh, shit, yeah, we should put our bullshit aside, which obviously they should have figured out by now. But, yeah, they don't. So I guess that's it. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, I still really liked the locker room scene. I still liked when they all came together. That was still nice. And they even had
Everyone
that
make
moment.
sure to resolve their emotional storylines in the locker room right before the big fight.
Yeah, and they got to have that moment of, like, realizing this is the last time we'll be, like, as a team. Because this is similar. I mean, I guess... like you said, with whether it be sports, anime, or whatever, but one of the things that pops into my head is Friday Night Lights because that show, it's all about, hey, we come together as a team and we try to win a sport, but we're all dealing with our own personal dramas, whether it be between each other or just our home life. So it's just, I don't think they've handled like playing that out properly that well in recent episodes. So, but it's still... I'm still on board. I still like the characters a lot.
Yeah, I liked. I mean, I know I complained a bit about the reason behind the big brawl in episode 10, but I do still think that as a show that's had to like plumb the depths of how can you make a karate story interesting with different beats and stuff, I like the structure they've laid out here where, it's a bit contrived that they have to have a bunch of group events or whatever, but it allows them to explore all of these conflicts in the first 3 episodes. Then episode 9, they have like the elimination or whatever where they're like literally Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do can't both proceed and they have a big final fight where Robbie kicks Quan and the kick is fantastic in slow motion. Just beautiful stuff. I mean, on Dimitri and Hawk, just continuing to shit on them, I didn't like their tag back and forth. It's supposed to show, oh, they're in sync now or whatever, but they just keep tagging each other every 3 seconds and then their voice or like them shouting to each other, okay, now tag me, now do this. It's just like not a realistic or cool way to do a fight. It kind of feels more like them ganging up on someone, but whatever. It was fine. But the Robbie Quan kick was great. So at the end of episode 9, Cobra Kai is eliminated, which is a very interesting way of doing things. And then episode 10, things get you get back into it with the one-on-one fights after the big group fight in 9. But then that turns into a group fight. And I want to get back to Tori now because
and they also undo it though. But I don't know if you're getting to that.
Yeah, no, you're right.
It just sucked that they undid because I was kind of impressed. I was like, oh wow, they kind of did something here. Let's see how they play that out, but they undid it. But I'm sorry, continue with Tori.
I would complain. So they undo it. If you haven't watched it and you're just listening, they undo it by having like a different team be disqualified. The Russians were on performance enhancing drugs. What a shocker. So they're like, okay, Cobra Kai can go back in, and at this stage, all the captains are fighting each other. I would complain more about the undoing it if not for the fact of how things go off the rails in the tournament, right? If it just went
Sure.
back to like, and now we have a standard tournament bracket and Miyagi and Cobra Kai are both in it, that'd be boring. But because everything goes off the rails and someone dies, it's like, well, clearly we're not going to pick up, and it's just like a tournament for the last 5 episodes, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't mind it that much, but yeah, I was going to say Tori, she's such a great actor. I remember her being a bit of a pain early on when the character was introduced, but I think that was just her character was pretty flat when she first came in. And then in season 6, part 1, when her mother dies, she has a lot of more meaty stuff to do, and she does really well with it. And now again, I think, even though, as you said, maybe we would have liked to see her go a bit more villain or whatever, it's still like a lot of big emotions and things she's grappling with, and she's like being tossed in between these different like influences. But I think she really shines through as one of the top actors, not just among the kids, but overall in the show at this stage, which is so surprising given where she started, or the whole character started.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Because we talked about it a lot in the past. She really was just a maniac all the time. Like she was always just crazy.
Like the fight in season 2, like you were saying, like it's a great fight, but also like she is a cartoonish villain.
Yeah.
And now like enough time has passed where the characters are mortal enemies. You know, Sam had PTSD over what Tori did to her, but now they're friends, but now they're enemies again. But I think she manages it really well, more so than Sam, if we're being honest. I don't think she manages to do much acting wise in this season.
True. I mean, to be fair, I think they don't give her a lot to work with.
Yeah.
It's always like, I think it's similar to what we were just talking about with what Tori had initially, because she's always just Sam LaRusso, so she's always just Daniel's daughter. Like they don't give her much beyond that. But speaking of cartoonish villains, even though I love Kreese as a villain, every time he was going to go murder Terry, it made me laugh. I laughed every time because he'd always take his knife out and he'd be like stalking through the corridors. Now, I do like that he kind of ended up having a payoff. It was Chekhov's knife or whatever. Like it did come to fruition with something with it, but it was just so funny to me that he'd just slowly be like coming through, but then something would happen like all of a sudden, all right, maybe it's not a good idea to murder him right now. But I will.
It's only
murder
one
him.
scene, Jim. I swear it's only one scene, but it seems longer because he's like looking at his knife for ages, and he's like, one episode ends with him going like, "It's over when I say it's over," and then episode 10, he's kind of skulking and stalking, and literally like we have the scene like kind of a Hitchcock composition of him in the foreground and Terry Silver in the background. And the knife is like gleaming in his hand, and then but the thing is, more people come into the shot further away, so it's like, oh, he's not alone, and he's like, maybe I shouldn't murder him, and then you literally see him in his face of like, fuck it, and he's about to go in, and then like that. So there's kind of that back and forth, and then it's like, everyone come to the hotel lobby or whatever, and that's when Cobra Kai are back in it. But yeah, it's very funny how he kind of has a scene where he's like, wait a minute, I'm a maniac. Why am I playing by these rules? Let me go stab someone.
Well, what's even funnier about that is because, yes, you have Kreese and Silver squaring off finally, like the biggest villain monsters on the show. But even to them, when they hear the cry of a death of a child, they're kind of like, what? Like, because when Quan, like, falls on his knife, everyone stops. Like, it echoes through the world, basically. It's like when Yoda feels all the Jedi being just strucken down with Order 66, because you have your villains that are even like, whoa, what are we doing here, guys? Yeah, we wanted to kill each other, but because they stop and have to come out and bear witness to what happened. It's similar to when you have Dr. Doom crying over the World Trade Center in the comics. It's like, no, they should be like, hell yeah, this is what we wanted. Finally, let the sadness tear through you.
Yeah, as you said, everyone just stops fighting immediately and everyone's acting shocked. And that's where I'm like, there's an imbalance between what's actually happening. Because, set aside all my joking and making fun of it, it's still like all these people are fighting, but they're fighting very seriously with one another with no referees. Like we saw the impact on Miguel of just being thrown from off a balcony, right, in season 2, which they handled pretty well, like the fallout of it, right? But then like everyone's just going at it. And I guess the implication is that everyone's just having fun with it. We're not really trying to hurt one another, but like clearly they are. So I don't understand how one person yelling is like, oh, suddenly everything stops and whoa. But it's like, that's it's a TV show, I guess.
My only problem with Quan dying, even though, like I said, I'm intrigued, and maybe this is what they're going to play out a little bit, but it kind of goes against, well, I guess it's too early to say it goes against this, but the mantra of the Karate Kid and what we've talked about so much is that there's no bad student, there's only bad teachers.
Mm-hmm.
But the only thing we know about
Quan's
Quan,
bad, though.
exactly, because even Chosen was Quan back in Karate Kid Part 2. He was going to murder Daniel.
Yep.
They were fighting to the death. Now, I don't know. Maybe I guess we did see a little bit. I kind of don't remember his background. I know he gets brought into Cobra Kai. He's already kind of a problem student that they bring in just because he's like naturally gifted or whatever. So I don't know. Maybe that's what they're going to play out, that it is going to be kind of even more devastating once we learn like the stuff he was dealing with that made him the way he was, that allowed him to be taken advantage of or whatever, his anger to be used as a weapon against other people. But I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking it. But to me, the big thing has always been, that's the whole thing with Johnny Lawrence. Johnny Lawrence, I know we can goof and make the idea Daniel was always the bully, and there's evidence for that. But the reality was Johnny Lawrence was a big fucking piece of shit. And then Cobra Kai showed us what he was dealing with, and we felt for him. And even we've seen with, like, I'm spacing on Miguel's, was it Kyler? Miguel's bully in a way.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. My favorite
like we
character.
even, like they still make him kind of an idiot, but like, we see his point of view a bit more. Like, that's the whole thing, is we always learn that there's more to these things besides maybe a Kreese. Although Kreese at one point was a young man that wasn't this person. So I don't know if we're not going to get a chance to see that with Quan, or we are. That's a question I have. But with there only being 5 episodes, I feel like they can't spend too much time on that.
Yeah, which brings me to my question, because I don't know the answer, which is good. What do you think happens in the final 5 episodes, Jim?
I mean, well, as we were talking about Miyagi, are we going to get more about this Miyagi history, or no, we have to, right? There has to be more to that.
That's the only part where I have a prediction, and it's that it's kind of a fake out, because the record says that the fight ended in death, right? Doesn't say who died. Doesn't say that Mr. Miyagi killed someone. It can either be similar to Quan, an accident or whatever that's not his fault, and that's kind of where Mr. Miyagi becomes very anti-tournament, very anti all of this stuff, or, he could have faked his death in that tournament to, escape from some unruly characters. Isn't that kind of what they set up in the first part of the season anyway, that he's got like this whole secret life, and then presumably fakes his death through this tournament and heads off? Like, it just says the fight ends in death. It doesn't say who died.
Oh, you're right. Okay. But because I had a horrible thought, and they better not do this, I don't think they will, is that they were going to Don Draper it, and like the Miyagi we know is the guy that killed Miyagi and then took his name and decided to like make good on that. Like, they can't do that. They can't possibly do that.
No, because I think I had some similar thought, but then I was like, yeah, but like, we've been back to Okinawa. Like, we know it's the dude that was in. We know that's the same person. So if it was someone else, it was like an in between person. So yeah, no, but I think that's going to be, if not a fake out, it'll be something that makes sense with Miyagi's legacy, and it'll be like, oh, Daniel, why were you so worried about this when you had children dying in front of you? Maybe you should have been focusing on something else.
Well, and now that the door's open, do you think we see CGI Miyagi one more time, but not in a villainous purpose like we're seeing here? Like, this can't be the last time we see, like, if in the span of the franchise Karate Kid, if the series ended now, our last image of Miyagi is him murdering Daniel. So
it's honestly shocking that they haven't CGI'd Miyagi earlier in this show, right? Like, I think you're right. They've done actually a really good job of using all of the clips, like all of the flashbacks, have him sit in a car, and then half the shot turns into the flashback of when he was sitting in a car when he was a kid, and Miyagi's talking wisdom to him, all that stuff. I will definitely get something like that, and maybe they'll incorporate the the potential CGI, or maybe just like a silhouette of him doing the crane kick on a beach or something, and Daniel-san smiles and turns around and drives away in his cool car.
They kind of did he saw like a fisherman in the distance, but it was someone else, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I am excited. I still love this show, even though I as it goes on, I get to have a little bit more nitpicks here and there because again, there's only so much you can do, and the answer isn't introducing more characters. Like, there's just too many characters already. Like, we don't need to know about Devin. We barely need
I agree with
Kenny.
Devin, but I like the new rivals, though. I think that's the problem.
I kind of like
the
new
characters where I think the problem is they introduce characters where they're like, let's like introduce them as villains, but then have them become 3-dimensional or whatever. No, these two villain characters are just straight up villains. I don't think they're. I mean, yeah, they'll probably have some sort of like, hey, you're all right, LaRusso, or whatever. But we don't have to get into a whole arc about it. You know, they're just cool, good fighters, and that's all we need from these characters. You don't have time to get into anything else.
It's similar. It's an extension similar to at the end of season 1 when they had the All Valley. Remember, there was like a blue dojo where one of the guys was like awesome. He was doing like crazy flips, but I mean, we never learned too much about him
or whatever.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll see. And it's still yet to be seen if they're going to somehow try to parlay this into a connection with the Karate Kid Legacies or whatever that movie's called that's coming out next summer.
Yeah. I've asked, like, what's going to happen in the final 5, but I don't really have an answer. I don't know. Are they going to... Like, they presumably have to do something more with the tournament because it's not done. But also, like, a kid is dead, and I feel like... They can't wrap that up surely in just one episode, like the fallout of this situation. Like, because what would happen is like the whole thing shut down. You know, like let's just call this up. But
you'd be
people have died in the
surprised
tournament in the past. Yeah.
You'd be surprised what they could do. I mean, Kreese's charges were dropped. Terry Silver's charges were dropped. So,
yeah, you're right.
You'd be surprised what they could do with one line of dialogue.
Yeah, it's really that was very funny because you're like, I know this is what's gonna happen, but I think that's part of like why it's such an enjoyable show because even that stuff, it's like it's trashy, but it's like tropey and it's fun to talk about. Like I always enjoy. That's why we have No Mercy, a Cobra Kai kickback. Search for it on your podcatcher of choice. But like, it's a fun show to discuss and even make fun of the parts that are more silly as well. That's always enjoyable. I always love talking about this show. So even the goofy stuff like that is kind of enjoyable in a way. But yeah, I don't know if they're just like. I don't know if the tournament's going to finish in episode 15, you know? Like, because it feels like we've kind of done the tournament and it's gone off the rails. So where do you go from there to actually resolve the story? I'm not sure, but I look forward to finding out. And we don't have to wait as long. It's in February. We're getting the last 5 episodes.
Did they announce
now.
a date? I thought they didn't announce a date yet. Oh, that's actually news to me.
Well, it's on Wikipedia. I have that.
I mean, I didn't Google it purposely because of spoilers.
You don't want to do a Jacob and get fucked on it. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. But yeah, it says February 13th. They're gonna drop the rest of the episodes according to Wikipedia. Anyway,
I'd actually love that. I'd be pretty excited.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, here's
between these two parts. So yeah, look
part
forward to
6 drops. Yeah, February 13th. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, it's a relatively new announcement too. So good. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, what did you think? Hit us up at showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com. If you're so inclined, please subscribe and drop us a review at any of your podcatcher of choice. Or even if you don't use it, Apple Podcasts is obviously a big one. You could still review us there.
Yeah. Share the show on your Blue Sky or whatever you're using these days.
Yes, absolutely. Anything else?
I think that's it. I think, there's no crying in karate. Remember that. And I guess beyond that, I just have one more thing to say, Jim.
Ooh, what's that?
Strike first.
Strike hard.
No
mercy.
We our show's what you know. We'll always watch TV. And if you think we can't, we'll watch more and you'll see. That's why the people of the web believe in Jim from Las Vegas and Jacob from Sweden.